Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. So, we're going to talk a little bit about baitcasters. Understanding one of these things. When you start with one of these, it's really hard sometimes. So, let's go into it and introduce ourselves with Maddie and Tay. Well, let's look at baitcasters today. So, it's interesting. I mean, baitcasters are totally different from spinning reels. Spinning reels, let me grab one. Spinning reels, the spool doesn't spin. I know, it's weird. It's called a spinning reel, but the spool doesn't spin. This does. This is called the line spooler. This is this line spooler. It wraps around there. And so when you open this, it just falls off. That's a spinning reel. Casting this is easy. This is what we learn on this or a spin caster. But this right here is nothing like this right here. I don't care how long you've been fishing. When you go from something that doesn't spin to something that does spin. So, we're going to open up this one I got from my buddy. So, this is spin bait casters. The spool spins. This area right here spins. And let me make sure excuse me. I think I do have the focus set. Yeah. I think I do. Camera control. Yeah, good. But this right here, the spool spins. So what ends up happening is that it requires weight to pull the spool and rotate it. Well, by doing that, the spool can over-rotate. And that's where braking has a lot to do with it, as well as the tension of this. So, I'm going to put up a graphic that's in my book. This is the cast, okay? So, this right here is when the line, our bait leaves our rod. When that happens, it's spinning and it's gaining momentum, getting faster and faster as we whip that thing out. Then sooner or later, it hits what we call an apex, and it starts to slow down and head towards our target area. And this is where the brakes have everything to do with this. And before it hits the water, I always keep an eye on my bait. If I lose my line of sight, I will just thumb it and stop it. So, there are two adjustments on a bait caster, okay? There is a tension knob right here. And this allows the spool to be more free. So if I tighten it all the way, the spool is very hard to pull and open. But if I loosen it, the spool freely spins. But I tighten it, it doesn't do. Now this has everything to do with this part of the cast, which is the release. When that release happens, the tension has everything to do with control of that line. So, how do you adjust this? Okay, it's really, really important. Typically, what you want to do is when you push down the thumb bar, it frees up the spool. Your bait will start to descend off of the tip. So what you end up doing is that the bait should descend slowly, gradually towards the ground. And you adjust this to get that bait to gradually go towards the ground. All right? Not fast. If it drops fast, if you're not very good at bait casting, you'll get a backlash right when you release it. We'll talk about that too. How to get farther casts. So this right here, after it hits the apex, then we're going to have what's called magnets or centrifugal or some kind of braking system. So these magnets, you can see the magnets, they actually go against this spool. So on the outside of a magnetic braking system, you can adjust it, all right? What that does, it pushes the magnets out or pushes them into the spool, closing that gap or widening it. And that's what this is doing. It's doing this. And what you want to do, if you got it on 10, it really closes the gap on it. And so the magnets are stronger on the spin of that. So, when you first are learning, what you want to do is drop that bait so slow it's hard to see, okay? Really, 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 really slow. You're going to tighten this. And then you're going to crank the brakes all the way up. And you're just going to get a feel for it. You're going to get a feel for this thing and try to get a feel for it. Now, as you get a feel for it, you're going to lessen it and loosen the braking system. The most important brake that this reel has is that, your thumb. So when I cast this, my thumb is riding, just barely touching the spool, the line on the spool. And right before it hits the water, I will stop it. All right? Because what happens if it hits the water and I don't stop it? Because it'll keep going. Okay? This is backlash. So it's important that you keep an eye on your lure as you cast it. So when I lose sight of it, that's when I usually have a backlash. Everybody gets a backlash. Everybody. I don't care how good you are, how good the reel is. You can buy $700 Steve's reel by Daiwa. $700 reel. You'll still get a backlash. You just get less of them. For $700, you better get less of them. Braking systems are complicated sometimes. Some of them are, Daiwa uses a DC, a digital braking system. It's actually, calculates it thousands of times a second. But still, you can get backlash. So it's important that you use your thumb. So ride that, just practice with it. And then as you get better and better and better at it, you can loosen it and minimize the brakes. I mean, sometimes you can just go 0 and go free spool and cast this thing a mile once you get the hang of it. So by tightening everything and braking it, you're going to get short casts. But as you get used to a baitcaster, riding it with your thumb and timing your thumb to stop the spool right before it hits the water, or right when it hits water. I mean, just boom. I mean, you just nail it. Okay. Now, some braking systems, $500 reels, they're designed to stop it right when it hits the water, so no thumb needed. But if you don't have $500, you got $30. $30. This is a great reel. This is the Torrent by Fizzy Fun. Great reel, $30. $500, $700. Top of the line, Shimano's, Daiwa's, Luz. The Luz Elite TI is $500. They're really good reels. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're really, really, really good reels, and they'll last a lifetime if maintained. And that's something else. These things, because you have more moving parts, in this than you do in a spinning reel, because really it's the handle and the line spooler that the spool doesn't spin at all. It just goes up and down. Okay, it doesn't spin. So this right here has more moving parts that are much more fine-tuned than a spinning rod or spinning reel. So with this, you want to maintain it with, reel oil, and put them inside the gears. Now, some of these reels, like this one, and again, for $30. This one has a port right here, a little screw. It comes with a screwdriver too. You just pull this out and you drop in just a couple drops, not a lot. It's not like filling up your car's oil, a quart at a time. 2 drops, boom. And that, when you work it in there, will just do wonders for it. Also, the line spooler, which is, line guide, this thing right here that goes back and forth, it runs on a worm gear right here. And that worm gear needs grease. So that one, you want to make sure that you put grease on it, not oil. All right? So there are 2 different things that you do to this reel on a regular basis. When my fishing season happens, I do it every few weeks, because you guys know I fish 3 times a week during the season. And I just make sure that everything is running really, really good. And all my reels are well kept. They really are. I break in the off season this time of year, snowing like crazy outside. This is the time to break apart all my reels and to do a really good spring cleaning or a winter cleaning on them. So there's another thing I want you guys to realize too about gear ratios. All right. Now, gear ratios, you're going to see this actually said a lot on it. This one's a 5.3 to 1. This one, I think it's an 8.8 to 1. Yeah. I can't find it on this. But this is I think it's an 8.1 to 1. So, gear ratios, what is it? Well, it is how many inches per turn goes onto that spool. So I do this one turn, and it brings in like 29, 39, 35, 40 inches. 40 inches is like a 10 to 1. So it's really the ratio of this to this, and that allows you to pull in fish faster. When is this important? And when is it terrible to have? So, most spinning reels, almost all of them, okay, they're 5 to 1. All right? So that's what you're used to, is 5 to 1. A fast spinning reel is 6.2 to 1. That's a fast one. All right? So, to be honest, you're used to, your whole life, you've been using a 5 to 1 or 6 to 1. And line retrieve. So you're used to that. All right? Anything faster is just faster. Okay? Now, when is a faster gear ratio important? It's when the fish swims towards you, because you're just trying to try to keep that line tight on him. And when that fish starts to swim towards you, you're doing this. That's what you're doing, and you're doing it slower. Okay, when that fish is swimming towards you, or he's smart. A bass is smart. He will swim towards you to create slack, so he can spit out the hook. Now, that's where gear ratio comes into play. If you can't do this, and you can do this, big difference. So it's really for that fight. It's not for anything else, okay? It's just not. Now, when is it a bad thing to have high gear ratio? Well, you guys know I like light tackle. I do a lot of BFS. So I'm using 4-pound and 6-pound line. What happens when you put too much stress on a 4 or 6 pound? It breaks. So if I had an 8-to-1 or a 10-to-1 gear ratio and I'm using 6-pound test on it and I get excited and I'll do this, I'll break my line. When a fish is fighting you and not swimming towards you, you can 5-to-1. This is a 5.3-to-1. I mean, to be honest, I catch anything with this. Anything. And that's all you need. This is all you need is a 5-point-whatever-to-1 or a 6-to-1. Some companies have really worked hard at creating a high gear ratio inside their reels to get a 10-to-1. 10-point-whatever-to-1. So they can have bragging rights that they have the fastest, all right, line retrieve. It's not that important. Fishermen have been catching the biggest fish in the world with less than that. I mean, the world records of bass were caught on slower speed reels, on trout, slower speed reels. I mean, come on. You don't need a high speed reel. Nobody does. It's just bragging rights. And you can break your line easier. So if you've got a 10-to-1, which is out there, several companies now are putting them out there, and you get excited, you can snap your line off. It really is for that 10-pounder, that double-digit bass swimming towards you, and it helps you keep up with closing that gap between you two. So when it comes to gear ratios, I don't want you guys to get caught up on that at all, because you've been fishing 5-to-1s your whole life with spinning reels. And there's not a spinning reel that I've seen, I'm not sure if there is one, past 6.2-to-1. There might be out there. I mean, I don't know everything. And 6.2-to-1 is the fastest spinning reel I've seen out there. And what do people catch on spinning reels? Everything. Big, small, everything. So that is not that important, all right? And to be honest, it rarely, once in a while, because I do fish a lot, I do get a fish that will try to close the gap on me. And I feel like I've got nothing on the line. And I'm just doing this. I'm thinking, did he fall off? And then all of a sudden he'll turn on me and try and fight me again. Bass are smart. I've seen them use debris under the water to remove a hook. I've seen them run on me and then hide and make me think that I had them lost. I've seen them close the gap real fast in order to make me think I had nothing on it. The bass fishing is the hardest fishing because it is the smartest fish. So hopefully this illustration right here helps you to understand the physics of a cast, and that the tension knob and the braking system have two different times that they're actually used. And then your thumb is used the entire time, especially when it hits the water. And your gear ratio is not important. It's not important. Most of my gear ratios, I'm in the 7s, all right? 7-to-1, because, it's not too bad. It's not too fast, and it's not too slow, sort of in the middle. But I have a lot of 5-to-1s, 6-to-1s. But the 5-to-1 or 7-to-1s, usually that's where I like to live. And then if you have a BFS reel, you really don't want anything past 8-to-1, because it's just 8-to-1 is the max I would go on reels. And just anything 9-to-1, 10-to-1, the bragging rights. It's just bragging rights by the manufacturer. And the problem with those gears too, they're much finer tooth. So the gears have to be made so much better, because with finer teeth you have less thickness on those cogs, and so they can break and they can skip. So typically a more coarse, gear is stronger than a fine gear. So that kind of think that into it too. It's the longevity of the reel too. A high gear ratio is such a fine, cog that they can slip or they can break off. And now, can I do that? Now I've got a mismatch. Yeah. Illustrations. Gestures. I'm working on them. Although I'm Italian, I got gestures. So hopefully this helps you out a lot when it comes to bait casting. And really it's just practice, 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 practice. Ride the thumb right on top of that to where you can barely feel it. And then right before it hits the water, stop it. And to be honest, all these great braking systems are not foolproof. A $700, $500, $400 bait casting reel will still backlash on you. It just will. It just will do it less. And with everything, it takes practice, practice, practice. So do that. Keep this in mind. And we will see you guys somewhere else.
I said, yeah. Oh, if you would shut up and feel.